Derk, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'm gonna high five you. Yes, man, it's finally happening. Now you know I admire you a lot. I think we share a lot of things. We have a lot of things in common.
Mm-hmm.
So we're both smart, driven, very passionate about things, and we have an insane work ethic, and we wanna get things done. And I think we want to help the humanity further, right?
Definitely.
Today we're not going to only talk about Castor, your company, but also talk about you as a person, like about personal development and stuff like that. But why don't you briefly start to talk about who you are and where you come from?
Okay, sure. Thanks for having me, Ferdinand. I really look forward to this. Originally I'm from Nijmegen, but I've been in Amsterdam for the past 14 years. And I think I will stay around here for the rest of my life, unless I'm going to move to some other country. But I love big cities. I studied as a medical doctor. I finished my training 2011 and then started my PhD on a sort of technical subject, medical informatics and general practice. And that's also when I started my company. Other than that, I live here in Amsterdam. I have a wife, I'm married. I have a kid who's 9 months old and 2 cats also. And I love to exercise. I love to improve, sharpen the axe, basically do everything I can to be as effective as possible.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think that's a good starting point. So you mentioned sharpening the axe, self-improvement. Where does it come from?
I think this has been going on for a while. I think when I started studying, somewhere in the early years, I was already starting to sort of get an interest in self-improvement. I think I read The 7 Habits, Highly Effective People.
It's such a classic one.
Yeah, it's very
Everyone starts with...
exactly. But it's it had a big impact. And I think I read it when I was like 21 or maybe or something. And so that's also when I started looking into meditation and exercise. And basically, I started noticing that I could really have a big impact on how effective and how effective I am in daily life, but also how much energy I have.
Did it take a lot of time before you noticed that?
I think it was very gradual. I don't know how long that took actually, right? Like for me now, it's a very obvious thing, but I know I sort of grew into it. So when I started working out, when I started running more, when I started meditating slowly but steadily, I think I started to figure out, wait, this actually has a big impact on my energy level and how hard I can push myself.
But as a kid, you were always very energetic as well already, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
This drive and this passion to do things.
Definitely super, maybe too energetic at times, but I was always the one who got sent out of class, that sort of stuff. But then it was super unfocused, right? I just had a lot of energy and I just put it into a lot of things. Not the things my parents wanted me to put my energy in, but still the things I thought were fun. So also starting my own little business, fixing computers in the neighborhood. But I had like 5 or 6 jobs, I think, during my high school. Also to be independent of my parents, so I could buy my own stuff, and they sort of couldn't control my financial flow.
Is that something you always wanted, or that just was, that it just turned out to be?
Well, entrepreneurship is definitely something I've always wanted to do or wanted to get into. I just loved sort of the idea of having a concept or a product or a service that you came up with, that you provide, and then that people want to pay for that. Mm-hmm. That's still like a magical thing for me.
And you live a value for them. You enrich in their lives in some way.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point you mentioned, so you started building websites. I read on the internet, right? So you had your own like website building company.
Yeah.
So how from there on? Can you take us?
Yeah, sure. So first it was just, okay, I'm good with the computers. Let's make money with that skill. And that developed into building websites, which was a very easy way to earn money during my medical training.
Sorry, how did you, you were always very technical because you knew how to fix computers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It was just, some people are good at dancing or singing. I'm not good at both, but I am good with technology, basically. So I noticed that I could easily pick up, programming skills, etc. And that's slowly turned into a website business that was very easy to run, but not super sort of intellectually challenging. And then I had dinner with my father at some point, and he said, my father was a neurologist, so a medical doctor, and he said, you should really start looking into the problems that we have in healthcare with IT. Because you're a medical doctor or training to be a medical doctor and you have all this IT knowledge. And I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. Because my father said it very specifically, I remember it very vividly. He said, you have to find your niche where you sort of, where two sort of specialties meet. And that's basically when I started looking into what can I do with the knowledge I have for medicine, for healthcare. So then I started, during all my internships as a medical doctor, I started building little sort of
tools?
Products, little tools for the doctors there to improve patient care or to improve their lives or to improve patient life, basically.
And you learned yourself how to code?
Yeah, that was just all self-taught. And now looking at the senior engineers we now have in the company, I wasn't that good, but I was really good at understanding what my clients wanted. I really understood the problem, and I created something that solved the problem, not with amazing code, but with something that worked. Basically.
Yeah, I think that's a great skill, right? That you can look from the perspective of the other person.
Yeah, I mean, it's very helpful if you want to be an entrepreneur, because otherwise you create something without market fit. Yeah. I don't recommend doing that.
Yeah, and then at some point, so. What was your age when you were doing those business, like the website buildings?
Oh, I think when I was 18, I started doing that basically. Yeah. So I just actually closed down my first company that I had. Because it was just, an administrative burden. But I had that for 14 years. So I've been, entrepreneuring since 14 years. But although I think entrepreneur is, maybe too big a word for someone who builds websites on his own. But
well, it's an entrepreneurial way of working, I would say.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and then at some point you started like the first concepts, what is now today Castor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So can you maybe start to share where did the idea come for Castor?
Yeah, I think it came...
And what is, maybe for the listeners, what is Castor?
Yeah. So I think the best ideas come from, running into a problem yourself. So that's what happened during my last internship from a medical training. I saw researchers, so basically medical doctors doing research, and they were struggling to capture all the necessary data for their research. Because if you want to do some research in healthcare, and actually in every field, you need data because you want to do a statistical analysis, and to run a statistical analysis, you need some form of data. And these medical doctors were capturing that data in Excel sheets and in other sort of self-built solutions that were basically awful. And because I had all this programming experience, I thought, well, this is not the way to do it.
And what are like the most setbacks of using Excel or SPSS or other forms?
Well, in this specific case, they wanted to use one Excel file for each patient. So that would mean you would then end up with like 100 different Excel files. And I just couldn't see how you could actually merge that together into one file that you could analyze. But even if you use one Excel file for all patients, there's still like a very high chance of you messing up, like filtering on the wrong rows and then entering data for the wrong patient, or making typos in the cells. And Excel, unless you configure it, doesn't validate that. Yeah. So basically you end up with a super messed up file that contains all kinds of errors. And then ultimately this Excel file is going to disappear somewhere on someone's laptop, never to be seen again. So this data also goes...
So like a waste.
Exactly, total waste, because that data is extremely valuable. So it should at least be possible to make the data available to other researchers. But if you use Excel, it's basically a one-way street to oblivion for that data.
Yeah. And then, so you had this idea, like, I want to build something that will replace, this type of work.
Yeah, well, mostly it was I saw that this was a problem, a challenge for the people I work with. So I wanted
to them as well.
Exactly, yeah. And they all said, yeah, we don't have a tool, we don't have a solution. So the first thing I wanted to do was just help them, basically. So help them with the process to simplify data capture and to make sure the data that they capture was high quality. And that slowly turned into Castor, basically.
And then, so you created like the first draft.
Yeah.
And then at some point, in the beginning, you were self-funded, of course, right? So bootstrapped. Mm-hmm. And then you got the grant from the Horizon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fast forward 5 years.
But maybe, I want to hear the story in between, like the highlights, how you see it.
So I think the first highlight was actually selling my MVP that I created myself to one of my best friend's bosses, a professor in cardiology. Actually, he wasn't even a professor then. So I think for 1,200 euros. But basically, I sold the product. So that's when I knew, okay, people want this. And then I sold it to this boss's girlfriend at the time. Because she was also running a big study, and then I think I charged 10K because I did a lot of custom work on it. So it was a lot of manual work from my end to set it up for them. And then basically I kept on selling it to individual researchers.
And they provide feedback, like
of course, yeah. So it was an ongoing process. Mm-hmm. So that's basically now built into the DNA of Castor that we really rely a lot on customer feedback. So the tool was really built based on, because I'd never done a clinical study at the time because I just finished my medical training. So I was really relying on these, other medical researchers who had done clinical trials already to tell me like, okay, the tool needs to be able to do this and that. So that's basically how it went. And it, Castor grew, and I brought in, our first developer, Sebastian, who's now our CTO. And I think, one big turning point was the Radboud contract in Nijmegen.
One step back, like what was the moment you thought, okay, I have this idea and I can sell it, people want to pay money for it. Like the moment you thought, okay, I think this can work, so I'll invest all my time, I will go further develop the product.
I think after the first 2 sales, I basically thought, okay,
you had already
was easy.
This belief?
Yeah, because it was so easy. Because I just built something, myself, and people wanted to pay so much money for it. It was crazy. So that was really sort of the first 3-4 sales, I think, were really sort of a good way to convince me that this was going to work.
And then back then, did you already have this idea, okay, I'm probably not going to continue, like you were still doing the PhD, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Like you finished it, right?
Yeah, I finished it in 2016.
So, I mean, you already knew it before that. You're probably not going to use it,
No, it wasn't as clear at the time. A lot of people telling me, you should, stay in academia, like become an epidemiologist, have some backup plan. Because back then Castor was super small. I wasn't paying myself any salary, right? I was living off my PhD. Like the first time I paid myself was, I think, 3 or 4 years into Castor. I was very dependent on my PhD also to survive. So people were telling me, you need a backup plan, blah, blah.
So that's why you continued the PhD.
Yeah, but also if I start something, I want to finish it. Like I really couldn't live with myself, I think, if
you dropped out.
Yeah, and it was doable. It was doable. The PhD was manageable. A PhD can be awful, so it can really be hardship if you have like an awful supervisor or your project just fails and fails and fails. Mine wasn't easy, but it was doable, and I could easily combine it with Castor. So for me, that was enough.
Yeah, but because that's impressive, right? Or because for most of them, that's the PhD is the only thing you do, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. I think it. I'm always super driven and focused.
Yeah, it shows a lot about yourself, I would say.
Yeah, I just spent a lot of time that I had on actually getting results, and because I already had the entrepreneurial experience, I think I had a better mindset to get to results faster than most people. So I knew, okay, this is the goal I have to achieve. I need to publish an article. So I was just lining everything up. Okay, what do I need to do to publish an article, and nothing else, basically. So that made the whole PhD extremely lean.
All right. So you were talking about Sebastian joined you, the first developer, and what happened after?
We just continued building the platform, and more researchers in different hospitals started using us. So we closed our first institute deal with the Maastad Ziekenhuis it's for a very small contract, but very nice, recurring revenue. And then quite quickly after that, I think Radboud was also interested in buying, which was crazy at the time.
That's a big milestone, right?
Yeah, because it's a huge academic hospital in Nijmegen. And
was it tough to get them?
Yeah. The way I remember it wasn't tough, but I think at the time I probably struggled. But I think they just loved the idea and the vision and just sort of the growth trajectory. I think that was the reason they bought in. And I think they made a great decision, by the way, because we're doing awesome. So I think their decision was really sort of strategic and smart at the time. But we were, I think, 5 or 8 people, like very small. So it was very exciting to close that deal with them, and it really helped us to also grow. That's also
further.
Yeah, exactly. And that was also when I brought in Rob, our current COO from BCG, to help structure things a bit more. I can structure a little bit, but then also maintaining the structure, that's, not something that's my
you
strong
need other
suit.
people who
Exactly.
can fill gaps.
Yeah, but I think that's at the time I was already reading lots of books, like the books you have here in your bookshelf.
Which ones do stand out for you?
I think I read From Good to Great quite early on, and of course, The 7 Habits, like I said, and I think there were a few books in there that at least also taught me that you can't do everything yourself. Basically, you need a good team and you need people to sort of fill the gaps that you can't fill yourself. Basically, so it was very clear for me that I wasn't going to do this on my own. And I think then later I started reading books that were more. So recently I read Scaling Up, for instance, and Venture Deals, because we were, raising the funding and basically looking into how we can structure the company. But I think some books work better in the early stages. So I think From Good to Great, for instance, was good to sort of have a good feel of what makes companies great. But Scaling Up is really nice if you're really sort of growing your business. And then in the meantime, I was reading all kinds of books also for personal development, like things like The Power of Habit. We're
going to talk about it a bit later, yeah?
Yeah. But there's so many awesome books out there. I just recently read A Guide to the Good Life, The Stoic Art of Joy, which is about Stoicism. I know you have a few books about Stoicism here. And the Guide to the Good Life.
Okay.
Which was actually recommended by one of our developers. But I really like that. I really like Stoicism as a life philosophy. So that's one I recently read.
And also Ego is the Enemy.
Yeah, I'm going to read that now. That's
awesome.
It's on the list. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, and of course, so you basically the company grew very fast due to clients coming in. Mm-hmm. You got a grant as well.
Yeah.
And recently you got the big investment from the investor.
Yeah. So
can you tell me can you share me some experience from how did you experience the investment trajectory? What are the biggest challenges?
The biggest challenges, I think, deciding on what to put in the deck, to be honest. I mean, we spend a lot of time on that. And, I always want to go big, big with the vision, big, hairy, audacious goals, really, like world domination type style.
I love that.
And then, me and Rob would be sort of discussing, okay, but there needs to be some kind of real world plan to actually get there.
Yeah.
And I was always saying, no, but we want to create the FOMO, these investors,
fear of missing out.
Exactly. They should really want to join us, right? Or they should really want to invest in us because they feel we're going to be huge. And ultimately, they want their returns. But on the other hand, especially I think more in Europe, more so than in the United States, you also need to have a solid business plan, solid path towards
how you're going to achieve it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that was for me one of the main challenges. How do we present it? How do we present it in such a way that it sounds plausible, but also is big enough, And
because I know a lot of CEOs, they are always sometimes maybe a bit too over optimistic, right? Because that's what I recognize it, what you're saying. Also with other CEOs, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but you also want to make sure that everyone sees the potential. So you really want to make it super crystal clear what the potential is. And then ultimately, I think the process is just... Actually, the hardest thing in the whole process was ultimately, I think, the negotiations, and we also had a few angel investors on, and keeping everyone happy and managing all the people that, and making sure everyone was... happy and everything sort of worked out in terms of timing. And we didn't even have to manage multiple investors because quite early on in the process, it was clear that our current investor, Incap,
was really interested.
It was just a good fit for us. That we liked the people, we liked their vision, they liked our vision, they had a long-term horizon.
Despite a lot of other interest, of course, from other VCs.
Exactly. But the question is how much effort are you going to put into each one of them? Because that's time you'll never get back. So, but there's different strategies, obviously. I mean, it's always good to have as many parties interested as possible. But I think you should also be careful that you're not going to go on some kind of wild goose chase, chasing after, tens of 10 or 20 investors to get offers on the table.
It takes a lot of time.
Exactly, a lot of time. Yeah. And then...
Is that something you maybe underestimated, like how long the process took? Or what are the... Can you maybe mention a couple of things that you underestimated?
Well, I underestimated the ultimate negotiation bit, basically, with all the lawyers involved. So
you thought it
long
was
forms.
wouldn't take that long?
Yeah, I thought it wouldn't be as annoying. Mostly, it started to wear me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like usually, I can keep going and going with this sort of stuff, especially with legal, and then things going back and forth and people not agreeing, and then that just wears you out basically.
And distracts from business, right?
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah, because you're not growing the business.
Yeah.
You're just talking to lawyers,
of course, which is also important.
Exactly,
But
it's very important. So you should definitely not neglect it. But it was something that, because for the most part, I think I had very realistic expectations because I read Brett Feld.
you were kind of well prepared, right?
Yeah, I think we were well prepared. I talked to lots of other founders, which I highly recommend doing. So you need as much information as you can, right? So talk to other founders, read books, read blogs. Okay, that one was a bit shady, but shaky.
Which do you?
I can't speak of one like top of head, but I do know there's a lot of good content out there.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of bullshit out there. That's what makes it difficult.
That's the difficult part, right?
But I think usually you can gauge if something is written by someone who knows what he's saying.
There's no like the well-known names are out there. Everybody knows them, so it's pretty easy to find, I would say.
Exactly. But I mean, come prepared, right? Otherwise, you're just going to get fucked, basically.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know what you're doing and you have to solely rely on lawyers to make your decisions, that's just
then that's a weakness. Yeah.
Definitely.
Plus, I also think one of your strengths is that you can understand concepts really fast, so you can really understand what is going on.
Yeah, I think if you can do that, that's a big benefit. And otherwise, see if you can find people around you who can do that.
Help you with that, indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you'll always be fighting
reliant on others.
Exactly.
As well.
Yeah, and it's very easy to. I think it's very that's a big trap to just relax and think, okay, my lawyer's got this, or my COO's got this, or whatever.
You always need to be on top of the shit.
Yeah,
as well. Right?
I think ultimately, you need to make sure as a CEO in this case,
everything.
What the hell's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're into the next phase, right? So you want to grow the team and expand outside outside Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about that? Like, what is the ambitions you have?
Well, the ambition is very simple: world domination, obviously. As I think it's the same for most CEOs of these types of companies. So the big hairy dishes goal is to basically see 30% of all trials, all studies running worldwide using Castor technology, and that can take a long time, obviously. But for now, what we need to see is strong traction in the US and the UK, and that's what we're focusing on, just because of the language and the homogeneous market, and the fact that mainly the US is just the biggest in scientific output, and the UK is approximately second. So these are just two great countries to focus on, and the challenge is really doing what we did here in the Netherlands there. So if we can achieve everything we accomplished in the Netherlands, which we're basically a market leader here. And
do you think cultural differences play a big role?
Well, I think they always do, but I don't think it's really going to hamper us. I do feel that people will be hesitant initially to do business with.
Because you're from the Netherlands, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why you need some footprint in the States.
Exactly. So the plan is to open an office there. The plan is for me to actually go there for, say, 18 months to establish the business, to bring in the right people, and to establish credibility in the US as a US entity also. So we already have our US entity, so that's taken care of. But now we also need sort of that track record and the credibility there to do business with big academic centers. So that's the next big challenge, basically. Seeing if we can sort of present the same image that we managed to present here in the Netherlands, in the UK, in the US. And if we can, then the sky is the limit.
And do you think your product is better than the competitors?
Well, that's a very broad question. I think in many ways it definitely is, but there are always things to improve, obviously. So I'm definitely not saying here that we have the perfect product. Hopefully 12 months from now, it will be close to perfect. But I remember myself saying this basically every year throughout the growth of Castor. So even though we've improved so many things, there's always so many new opportunities for things to improve.
It's always.
But I do feel that already we are beating out a very large percentage of the competition. And then there's a few bigger competitors who are way more expensive or, basically have a different business model. And, there are still steps we have to take to beat all of them. But I think we're on the right path, and we're definitely in the top segment already. But we're not we're not as good as the biggest, most expensive, baddest competitors that have been around for 35 years. I mean, that's a process.
And how do you experience like the growth of your company in terms of people? Like you mentioned very different phases, like you started with yourself, then Sebast joined, then you had like 5 or 10, and then you had 30, and now you're going to the next phase. How do you experience this?
It's very interesting. It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, and I think what makes entrepreneurship
Why is it
so much fun. Yeah, because it's just people have like unlimited complexity, you know. Every individual is, you know, their own individual is unique, and the way one individual interacts with another individual is unique. And then, you know, multiply that by 30. So 30 people interacting with each other. So you can understand that that becomes a very sort of 3D chessboard. Basically, it becomes a little bit hard to predict what will happen. So I think that's the advantage of being an experienced CEO at some point. I'm not saying I'm that, but I can imagine if you're like 50 and you've done this a couple of times, you start to see patterns, right? So your brain gets sort of wired to see patterns, and you can quickly respond to things. But right now, I'm totally in learning mode.
But you also read about these kind of things, right?
Totally. So yeah, one of the books I also recommend if your team is growing is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Basically, I like that too. About sort of creating openness and trust first, and then building sort of the pyramid of, you know, a well-functioning team on top of that. But it's challenging if you keep on adding new people with new personalities who you don't really know yet, and you have to see the interaction with them, but you also have to work on your own interaction with them, and then sort of show them what the culture at the company is.
It's becoming more and more complex, of course, because there's too much people at some point to do it personally every time.
Exactly, and that's why I think there's this thing that the CEO of Netflix at some point said is he was really worried about the culture when the company grew, and then he came to the realization that there's so many more brains in the game, and all these brains can help you maintain the culture. So that's been really reassuring for me. That thought, like, oh yeah, but I don't have to do it on my own. The more people I add, the more people I also have in place to help me maintain the culture.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure that the people that come on board are, you know, that they understand the culture, that they start contributing to it.
Maybe that's the challenge then.
That is the challenge, I think. Yeah. Well, that's one of the challenges, but I think for me, one of the biggest ones.
So, last question about Castor. So what are, like in the past few years, what are the 3 biggest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them? What did you learn from them? That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it's very tough. Also because my brain is sort of wired to forget about. I learned from mistakes and failures, obviously, but how painful things were, that dulls a little bit. I think that's for most, you know, painful things in life. The hardest challenges.
Doesn't have to be 3, can be 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, one thing that's always been challenging for us, but it's still a challenge, is do we focus on commercial research or academic research? And I think that the decision is going to be we just focus on both. But we've been debating this a lot, and for me, it's always been clear that I always want to support academic research. So I never want to let go of that. Yeah. But the academic space is a bit more challenging if you want to grow your business, especially in terms of, you know, making money. So I think that's been an ongoing challenge. To be honest, a very sort of ordinary thing, pricing. Pricing has always been a huge challenge.
If you look to the SaaS blogs, every company has this issue.
So, I mean, we've spent so much time on pricing. It was just, you know, insane. And then I think a third one is just overall, you know, the people. I can't, you know, point to a specific example, but we've had our share of issues basically with people not being in the right place, or, well, you know, there's so many things that can happen when you bring in lots of people, and
I think it's inevitable.
It is. So I think I've sort of accepted the fact that these problems are going to be there. But I would definitely point that out as one of the main challenges that we faced, just dealing with difficult people issues. Not to get into specifics, but
and how can you solve? I mean, how can you make it more efficient?
More efficient. I'm not sure if you can make that more efficient.
It's something that's always there.
Well,
and you have to deal with it.
So having a great culture, I think, in which people honestly and openly discuss things, I think will solve a lot, because at least you see things coming. Because if there's sort of a political backstabbing culture, then things will just sort of blindside you. So I think that makes a big difference. But you can't foresee everything, and sometimes you just have to deal with things. And for me personally, the only way to get better at it is to basically get through it. So if you're in the middle of it, it feels like, oh my God,
Shit.
when does this nightmare end?
Exactly.
And then afterwards, like, okay, well, there was a few good lessons to be learned. And then the next time it's easier and easier. But yeah, I don't think you can really be super efficient with that. After all,
okay.
Yeah, like I said, all people
Everyone is different.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So now a couple of questions about yourself. Like, who are the people that inspire you? Like, other entrepreneurs or?
Not always entrepreneurs, but mostly. I'm also now really in sort of an entrepreneur mode with this discussion. So, to be honest, we discussed this before, but like Elon Musk is inspiring in some way. But
even though you find him an asshole,
exactly.
But why? Yeah. He's one of my heroes.
Yeah, but I think that the way he treats his employees, that's really not. I don't admire that at all. I think he's like totally taking the wrong direction there, and I think at some point that should backfire. Or I think it already is backfiring a little bit at Tesla, but. I do like that he just doesn't accept that something isn't possible, and that's something I really like doing a lot. Like for me, unless I really sort of hit my head against the wall for the 50th time, I might maybe accept that something isn't possible. But until that time, I just don't want to accept it. And I think that's inspiring. Ultimately, believing that something insane is possible. So building a unicorn company, basically, that's. Yeah. Looking at the statistics is insane, is impossible. But I still feel it's totally possible. Yeah. I like that, and I like that drive. Thinking, fuck what everything believe. We're just gonna get it done. We're just going to do it. So that's really inspiring. To be honest, I hate Steve Jobs also, basically for the same reason. But he is sort of inspiring in the sense that he wanted to create a great product always. At least that's the way I understand him. And I think that's inspiring too, creating an amazing product that everyone loves. So I always say I want, and specifically actually Tesla and Apple, to be honest, I want people to talk about Castor as they talk about their iPhone. Like for some reason you have all these crazy
WhatsApp,
people.
Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but now WhatsApp, Facebook, I think more like if you look at how people talk about their Tesla, or people talk about their iPhone or some other Apple product. So I don't have any Apple product, but I mean, they really sort of evangelize a lot. And I mean, that's sort of that experience where people are so in love with your product that they keep on talking about it.
That's the ultimate.
That's the ultimate goal for me. Yeah, to be able to create a niche product, even so that makes it even harder. A niche product that people proactively talk about with their customers, with their colleagues and friends, because it's so amazing. And that inspires me to create a product that's so amazing that people really want to tell their friends about it, basically. And then there's lots of other people who inspire me, but
Jeff Bezos?
Not really, to be honest. No,
I think Amazon is really fantastic.
Amazon is fantastic, but Jeff Bezos, I'm sorry, it's just no.
Maybe you
of course, there's a lot of things inspiring about him, but in general, like I think the way he runs his business and the things I've read about Amazon, I can't respect that anymore, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any like routines or morning routines or habits?
I try to exercise every morning. Obviously, super boring. But
it's one of the things we didn't touch. But at Castor, you really encourage people to be healthy, right? So healthy lunch and standing desks.
Totally. And exercise also. We try to exercise on Wednesdays, but not everyone is into that. Yeah. But like I see so much value coming from trying to exercise 5 times a week. So either running or working out or cycling. It gives me so much energy and makes it so easy to deal with complex issues. Because I want to sort of give that gift to everyone, but it's hard to. It's sometimes hard to.
You can only see it if you know it. Right?
Exactly. And same goes for and meditation is actually even harder. Like I also am a firm believer in meditation and the way it quiets the mind, but it's also hard to make that come across. And my ideal morning routine would be.
What about taking naps?
Yeah, also. Yeah. But taking naps, like I want a nap room in the new office, basically.
Awesome.
So I'm a big fan of naps. But for all, like the thing is people are working so hard, and the same goes for me, actually. So when you're trying to get things done, it's really hard to sort of take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to do a nap.
You really have to make time for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you have to really understand the value of these things if you're going to make time for it, basically.
Well, I think I would turn it around. Because you won't be able to work like 6 or 7 days a week if you're not doing stuff like that, right? So
Totally.
you will be exhausted after 4 or 5 days.
Totally. Yeah, I fully agree. I think that if you pay attention to what you eat and how you sleep, obviously, I think a lot of people think they can go with like 5 hours of sleep, but the number of people that I can actually do that and stay as have the same performance as with 8 hours of sleep, that number is very small.
Yeah, sleep is important.
Yeah. So for me, I sleep with like I have sort of eye mask that sort of blinds out all the lights. I wear earplugs at night. So so
Okay.
I really sort of try to optimize sleep.
This
a
is
lot.
next level shit.
Yeah. No, but like I said, like I take the best of everything I see. So I use supplements, although I actually know there's no super strong scientific evidence for it. But
You just try what works, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And also I'm like this whole thing works, focusing on sleep, like using all the tools I have to sleep really well, exercising as much as I can, preferably in the morning, because then I just get it done and then it's out of the way and I start the day, energized. Cycling to work always. It's
Or
like-
walking.
or running, running actually, and taking supplements that may or may not work, but everything combined gives me just a shitload of energy and and super strong drive to accomplish things and to also hopefully inspire people. So I'm like, okay, this works. I'm not going to touch it, but I know that if I stop exercising, for instance, I just like 1 week later, I will see the effects already.
And you constantly modify like the things, right? So you constantly experiment with new things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of also in my nature, right? I just want to try I want to try everything, basically. I want to have, like when I die, I want to have tried basically everything that's not
Exactly.
directly lethal.
Yeah, it's awesome. So one of my takeaways from this podcast, actually, that I even feel more that we're similar in a lot of things. No, I'm really, I'm serious. So we share a lot about Castor and yourself. Is there anything we didn't touch upon and you would still like to highlight?
One thing I think is that people really very often say that they're busy.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
bullshit.
It's a matter of priority.
Yeah.
And this is also cliche. Like I'm just great at sort of bringing together lots of things that other people have come up with. So I'm definitely not claiming any ownership or authorship over anything I've said, but just being strict with yourself and saying, exercise is a priority for me, or, spending time with my children is a priority for me, or, spending time on sales, whatever is a priority. Anyway, it's about setting priorities, and then you can decide. You have control over your life, basically. So you decide where you want to spend your time. And people saying I'm busy and then, Netflixing 3 hours in the evening, that's fine. But then just be honest with yourself that you prioritize Netflixing because it relaxes you, right? That's fine. But at least if you get into that mindset of saying like, I'm in control, I decide what my priorities are. And I now prioritize eating chocolate and watching Netflix because it makes me feel good and I'll have energy for tomorrow's job. That's fine. But don't sort of be the
victim.
The victim. That's so I think that's very important. That really helps me a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, totally agree. So, Derk, I want to really thank you for sharing your insights, and I wish you all the best with Castor, and I will speak to you soon, man.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
I'm going to shake your hand.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Awesome. So thank you for listening, and see you next time.